Everybody, welcome to the Lion's Den of Leadership. This is your host, Steve Rosenberg, along with my good friend, Alex Osenenko. I got it right, huh?
You're
Nice.
awesome, man.
I'm getting
Hello,
it.
everyone.
I'm getting there, man. So today we have an amazing show. I'm very excited to have my very good friend, Errol Allen, on. We're going to talk a little bit about him. I'll just explain the context of why we even created this show. Alex and I, as entrepreneurs, as business owners, are always going through the gymnastics of trials and tribulations of challenges that happen. Not necessarily what product we offer or, what service we can do, but more of how do you deal with the daily down and dirty issues that go on with being an owner of a company, an entrepreneur of a company, where you're trying to figure out how do I provide a better service? How do I get my employees to stop quitting? Or how do I get my employees to care about the product that I offer? And how do I de-stress them? And I think these are all the untold things that they don't talk about much in the business world. Everyone talks about how you can provide better service and this and that, but they don't actually talk about the day-to-day running your company. So I'll give you a little background. Errol, we met Errol, I'm going to say probably about 3 years ago. Is that about right, Errol? Maybe 4 years?
Right, yeah, 2015, yeah.
Okay, it's etched in your memory, huh?
Yeah.
So I'll never forget that we met Errol. We were having problems. I think our size was about 200 doors maybe. And we were giving bad service and we were losing owners and we could not figure out what was going on. And I remember we asked our business coach, Doug Winnie, and we said, Doug, we want to find someone that can help us with better customer service. How do we get better customer service and care, get our employees to care? Because not that we knew that they cared, but the perception was from the outside looking in was that we didn't care. And so we wanted to change that. And so Doug suggested, talk to my good friend Errol. He'll be able to help you. So we bring Errol in, and I'll never forget. We sit down with Errol. I think it was me and Pete, and he says, "Well, what's your problem?" And we said, "Well, we want to give good customer service, and we're not, and we want to provide a better environment for our customers." And he goes, "Well, tell me what you do." I'll never forget. Tell me what you do. And we're like, well, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, tell me how you do a system." And I think we picked like onboarding a new owner. And I don't remember if we wrote it down or we just talked you through it. But what was interesting was Pete and I had completely different interpretations of how we did that process. And Errol said to us, "That's your problem right there. You will never give good customer service, until you can provide the same product consistently day after day to where I could come in," meaning Errol, "and I could actually do your job without thinking, and it's systemized. And until you can do that, you're never going to provide good customer service because everybody has a different interpretation." Do you remember that day, Errol?
Yeah, I remember that. Yep.
So of course we hired Errol on the spot, and he became our adopted workflow systemization guru. And I'm going to say about 2 years you lived at our office. Is that about right?
About a year and a half, yeah.
Year and a half. So Errol had a 1983 Commodore 64 computer that he would run that would start smoking when he would do too much flow charts with us. And we went through the monotonous, to me it was, poking you in the eyeballs type stuff of going through and systemizing our company you name it. I remember we'd be in a meeting. We used to have, I think, 3 meetings a week, 2 to 3 hours a day. And we'd get stuck on a yes or no. If this, what do we do? And then that would go into somewhere else. And we'd have papers, flow charts all the way out our office, up the walls, I remember, and trying to figure out how to systemize this thing. And thanks to Errol, and I'm very vocal about it, that if it wasn't for Errol, we may not be in business, because what he did is give us that spinal cord, that backbone to be able to provide that good customer service. And of course that changes, and we still use Errol to this day, tweaking systems, because everything has to be tweaked. But if I haven't said it, Errol, I appreciate you in our lives, because you made our lives much more stress-free than it was the day before we met you. So thanks for being on the show, man.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. Thanks for having me here.
All right,
that's quite an introduction, Steve. That's very, very nice. So Errol, maybe I turn the tables on you, Steve, if you don't mind, and say, what do you do?
What do I do?
Yes, sir.
I'm an operations consultant. I go in and look at my clients' processes. I flow chart them out, what they're doing now versus what I think they should be doing. I flow chart out what they're doing now. Then we look at them. We look for ways to improve the process, whether for effectiveness or efficiency. We make sure it has good communication points in it. We make sure everybody that's impacted by it is taken into consideration. And then I take the flow chart, because the flow chart is just what you do. Then I take the flow chart and create task manuals. The task manuals are how you do what you do. Each step in the flow chart, how do you do that step? And if you have a software platform, where are you in the software platform doing this step? Because I want to take screenshots, or you can video exactly what the person is doing to complete the steps in the process. So now, like Steve said, I could be driving down the freeway. Client can call me, hey, I need you to do this. Either I can pull over right then and there and log in and look up that manual and do it, or drive to their site and sit down and do it. I would be a little slower than the person who normally do it, but it would be right. So and then I create, because I'm a stickler on managing your employees properly too. So I create job descriptions and performance standards for my clients' employees. I even do some management training also, because that kind of comes natural with what I do. A lot of my clients have never managed anybody before, so those management questions come up. So I usually do a little management coaching too. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
I think at some point you were a marital counselor for me and Pete when we were ready to tear each other apart. Not as bad as some of your other clients, but there were times where it would be us three in a room, and Errol would be like, "Well, tell me how you feel about that," and you tell me how you feel about that, and we would, we basically voice our gripes and our concerns, or you do with other employees. I remember, when there was ever conflict, sometimes we'd even call you to come in, like, hey man, do you mind sitting in on this meeting and,
right.
and kind of being the referee for us?
Right. I thought I was gonna have to get a zebra shirt,
Throw a penalty flag, right?
Right. But it's fun, and I love it, man. I love doing all of that. So I'm just having fun, actually.
Errol, what is the most common problem that you can give if our listeners stop this video or audio recording in 4 or 5 minutes from now? What is the one biggest mistake you see, and how would you recommend they solve it? So if they tune out in 4 minutes, they're still going to get the value out of the show.
Ooh-wee.
I like to put you on the spot. See how you do.
I could think of two things. You asked for one. Training your employees. I think even the documenting your processes part, while that's important, I think it's just as important to train your employees properly. Take the proper amount of time to train them, because if you don't do that, then you can't hold them accountable for their job performance. If you don't take time to train them right, how can you hold them accountable? And then what usually happens is you have high turnover, because either they grow frustrated because they don't get any training, or they get fired because they're not doing the job properly. Both lead to turnover, which leads to your customer being negatively impacted because your turnover is so high. So I would think train your employees properly.
So that's a what? How about how? Like give us some of the tips and tricks.
How to train them properly? Wow. Then there you go back to documenting your processes and writing out procedures. Now you have a training tool right there.
So if even someone that doesn't have Errol necessarily in their lives yet, but they want to sort of really do their business a favor and reduce the retention, your recommendation is take the time to flow chart the process and make that part of the employee training.
Right. Flow chart the process, and even more importantly, create your task manuals, because that's your training tool. Whatever role you have for that person, okay, what tasks are incorporated in that role? What will you hold them accountable for? And then that's your natural training program. Whatever they're being held accountable for, you make sure they know how to do it. And if you've created your task manuals for each one of those tasks, now you have your training program right there.
That's pretty excellent.
Yeah. One thing also I'll say, when Errol was working with us initially, I'll never forget, one of the things that he really pounded in our head is that every time there's a handoff from one person to another or one department to another, that is where mistakes happen. And that's where it's like an elbow, right? And that's where things will break, because things get lost and misplaced or didn't know. So the more times you're handing it off from one person to another, Errol kind of instilled in us that when that person is done with it, it should never come back to them. Remember that, Errol? Is that still the way you do it?
Yeah. If I gave you a book to read, I said, Steve, read this to me, and the book was upside down, the first thing you would have to do is turn it where you could read it, right? But if I gave it to you where you could just start reading, that saves you that motion. And it's the same thing. If I give it to you like you need it, then you can just continue on doing what you need to do after it's been handed off to you, versus you don't get what you need when it's handed off to you. Now it has to come back. That's rework. And you want to stay away from rework. It just slows everything down. So you have to know, what is it that my handoff needs? What is it that they need from me? In what format, which means you have to communicate with them to find out, how do you need this? What does this need to look like? How do you want me to let you know it's your turn to do something? You have to take it into consideration.
One thing, Errol, and I don't know if we were an anomaly, I hope not, but I remember when we were doing stuff, when we first flowed out, when you said, let's flow this out, and we flow charted everything. And then you said, okay, now let's bring in the property managers and everyone who's involved in this process, and let's see if they agree with this. And, Alex, what was the most kind of scary thing for us is all of a sudden property managers and everyone who was involved in that particular process were like, we don't do that. Never knew I had to do that. Didn't even know we offered that as a service. And we're going, but we told you about it. Like we had this discussion, and they're like, don't remember that conversation. There were things that were just getting totally bypassed, and we found a lot of redundancies. Why we do that down here when we do that up there in the process? And Errol, I remember, Errol just said, tell me what you do. So we basically talked through exactly what we did. He put it on paper. He laid it out. Sometimes it went all the way out the door, but basically he laid it out and said, do you agree with this? And we looked at it. We said, yeah, that's right. Bring everyone else in and let's see if they agree. And that's what was very eye-opening. And that's what kind of explained to us why we were giving bad service. Is but half the things no one even knew what they were supposed to do, or they were doubling up. It was very telling that there was a communication problem of what we thought they were doing, and maybe they just did it on their own because it didn't make sense. Or is that common, Errol, in a lot of companies?
It is common. If you don't have your processes documented, then people make their own. Because they're trying to get the job done. So they come up with their own. And if you have two people doing the same job, then their processes are different. Although they're doing the same thing, one does it one way, one does it another way. So that's even more of a reason to come up with a standard way to do things. And what I find myself doing, I interview the people that do the work versus the leaders of the company. I want to get it from the people that do it every day, because when you have your leaders, oftentimes they're removed from the day-to-day. So they're thinking that they know how it's done based on when they were doing it themselves versus how it's actually being done now, right? And that gap, I see that gap all the time. And there's nothing wrong with it. You're just removed from it. And so you've kind of lost touch with how things go now versus how they used to go. So it's important to get everybody in the room, everybody that touches the process, participates or is impacted by the process. Get them in the room so when you go over it, you do it one time. You analyze the process one time. and make the changes you need to make and go on to the next one.
So people who tuned out 4 minutes ago when they got the nugget, they're missing out on this deep wisdom here. I'll tell you, man.
Yeah,
The short attention spans are missing out, and the rest of it's going to be even better. I guarantee you. I wanted to ask you a question, Errol, and I know, Steve, you have your line of questioning, but I do want to ask this one question, which is interesting. It's just kind of a macro question. In your experience, and if the most complicated business you've ever consulted in was at a 10, where does the property management business stand? I mean, from your experience, how the complexity of the business compares to some of the other businesses you worked in?
They're all complex, to be honest with you. You have so many moving parts, right? One company may be bigger than the other one, but bigger doesn't always mean it's more complex than what people consider maybe a smaller business. They're all complex in their own right, just because of all the moving parts. When you look at a property management company, okay, how many processes are you talking about? It could be 30 to 40, just based on my experience. And then maybe a larger company, it still might be the same, 30 or 40, maybe 50. So they're not in my opinion, they're not any more complex. It's just a matter of, okay, you have a property management company versus a trucking company. Okay, what does it take to run a trucking company? Okay, that's pretty complex. What does it take to run a property management company? Oh, okay, that's pretty complex too. So I don't see any one company being any more complex than another. To me, I treat them all the same, Alex. I do. I treat them all the same.
I just wanted to understand it. Like I used to sell software into manufacturing companies, and I know you used term rework, and that's scrap rework. It's kind of manufacturing speak for the defects in the product where you have to get rid of those. You can't sell those as non-sellable product due to defect somewhere in the product lifecycle management system or on the actual assembly line, whatever it may be. But it's just I'm just curious because there seems like a lot of moving parts in property management, but I don't know. I just wanted to know if it strikes you as less or more complicated. But if you say so, I guess the answer is like every company is complex in its own way.
Right. Every company is complex in its own right. I treat them all the same. What do you do? I want to know what are your process? How many departments do you have? How many positions? What are the positions within the department? And what tasks are each one of those positions responsible for? That's where I start. And to me, they're all the same.
And what is your background, Errol? What is your background? Like, how'd you came to be the process guy?
At one point in my corporate career, I was an operations analyst for two different companies. One of the well, it's not in business anymore. The Houston Post, I was an operations analyst there. And then TCI Cablevision. It was a big cable company out of Colorado. Had a big location here in Houston. I was an operations analyst there. And that's all I did all day long was look at processes for all the departments. Let's look at this process. Or I kept a lot of data on how the company was running operations wise. And just looking at how things were tracking over time, it kind of pointed me in a direction of what I needed to look at. So when I decided to leave corporate America, I asked myself, when was I having the most fun? And it was when I was an operations analyst. So I figured okay, let's see if I can do this for myself, because I kind of figured companies needed it. So I just took a risk and got out there.
And then you met us.
Yeah, then I met y'all.
So you're fairly fresh out of the corporate world, or how many years have you, or months? I don't know.
2011 is when I left corporate America.
And what are your own entrepreneurial plans? Like, what do you take in this, Errol? Are you happy being sort of being the solution provider yourself and making this kind of huge difference in companies' lives, or are you looking to build out a team and more or less scale what you currently have?
Yeah, I'd like to scale it because I have a lot of people pulling at me now, wanting my services. So I have to be careful because people want me because they hear about me. And I want to create something where I have some clones of myself that can do the same thing I do because I see the increase in business. So I need to clone myself maybe 2 or 3 times and scale it. I'd like to have some people on different sides of the country. West Coast, East Coast, Midwest, Southeast, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, all in there. I'd like to have somebody where if we get some client interest, then I can just point them in the direction of the person that's nearest to them versus me doing everything.
So let's give you a little bit of a plug. Let's give Errol a little bit of a plug. So if people are watching right now and they find themselves that their love process is the operation guys or girls, and they want to work with you or under you, how would they reach out to you?
Just call me 281-467-9189, or you can email me Errol@ErrolAllenConsulting.com.
That's awesome. Like Commodore computer, right? You gotta
we called it Jelly Bean. Had to feed it jelly beans just to keep it working.
It was a Dell. I still have it. It still works, but of course
the museum didn't take that from you.
I use a Surface Pro now.
Yeah. So what you talked about processes, and what we found is, we took what Errol created with us or for us and kind of took it to an nth degree, I would say, because we took that and created checklists out of that. And then we went from those checklists and made them online, and Pete kind of went off on this checklist tangent. And the checklists that we have now are indicative of the predecessor of what Errol created on the flow charts and systemizations. But what we found is we have about 19 checklists of standard things that always go on. Owner termination, owner onboarding, lease renewal, move-in report, move out. So we came up with 19. Is that, you mentioned over 30. Are some of those like the one-offs that you're talking, Errol, or? Yeah,
30 is about a good range for property management, 30, 40. It just depends on, I'm going to flow chart everything.
Yeah.
Everything you do, I'm going to flow chart it. So that's what I've seen, like 30 to 40. Some of them are one-offs depending on how that company does things. Everybody does something a little different. Some may have additional processes that another might not.
Yeah, because like, for example, we don't have a checklist for service tickets, but there's a flow chart associated with service tickets because our teams in Mexico handle all of our service tickets. Our property managers don't even see them. So that's an example of there's a manual. We have a flow chart, we have a manual, we have a process. Pete has everything documented, videoed, you name it, but there's no checklist for that. You don't checklist something that you're doing 500 times a day. There's no reason for that. But so I guess I could see that. We probably have, I would say probably 30, 40 processes, but the checklists are the ones that will kill you. It's like in flying, right? You have checklists for the things that will kill you, not for the things that you do every day, like driving to work, right? So I had a question. So Alex, back to you now. What system, what do you have in your company? If you were hiring Errol and you said, Errol, I have a problem, because maybe we can work through Errol doing a diagnostic sort of, I don't mean to put you on the spot, Errol, but I do. So what thing do you have that's kind of something that you go, okay, Errol, this is my challenge, and maybe we can have Errol walk you through a bit of it, and we could go through this process.
That's a very good setup, Steve. And so what my problems 8 months ago Where
Challenges, not problems, they're challenges.
Challenges, right? Challenges. 8 months ago, where we had our account manager, like think of it as property manager, do everything. So from building out a campaign for a customer to sending out their review requests for reputation, to actually set up and have a perfect client profile talk and doing everything. So they were talking to the clients, devising a strategy, and executing the tactical elements of it. So this was, and this is kind of how we structured the company. Initially, we had account manager, then okay, they need an assistant. Account manager and assistant account manager together can handle a significant group of clients. We mapped out the time it takes for each task. We're like, okay, well, they can manage 100 clients together, or however many was that back then. And that makes sense for us. So then we can, there's margin, we can make money on it. The next thing we found is like, well, there's a turnover situation. If we continuously promote assistant account managers into account managers, then what happens is, all the clients lose the relationship and the new pod begins. And so we had to smooth out that process. And then we decided to go to squads. I know this is a long question. We decided to go squads. The concept of a squad is a little bit different. I borrowed that from Australia. Ben White and Adam Hooley concept is where there's an executive on top of the squad leader. And there are a couple assistant account managers, a couple account managers, and then each account manager has an assistant. So it's kind of like a unit. Well, that didn't really solve the problem. And so what we're doing now is we bifurcating product delivery from strategy and service. So my account managers moving forward will only focus on strategic discussions with clients, as well as tracking the project and results, reporting on ROI for marketing services we produce. Where the actual product delivery, the building of campaigns, reputation emails, we have a separate team now that does product delivery that we're currently doing exactly what you just said, what you articulated, which is flow charting. And the reason why we're able to do that, we brought in a Silicon Valley kind of veteran here to run our websites and technology team. And I think he's you in some ways, Errol. He's very, very process and flowchart oriented. So we're actually doing what you suggested. But this was our problem. This is how we recognize it, and this is what we're doing about it. What do you think? Might not seeing something. What else we should be doing? Give me some.
Well, as you were talking, I was thinking down the track you just went. When you started with the account manager doing everything, I was thinking, okay, and how much time is that taken away from the core task that you want them to do, which is, as an account manager, I'm thinking relationships, right?
Yep. 100%.
Managing the accounts, right? Versus creating strategy and building campaigns. So when you got to where you split it out into the unit format, where you have an executive and then account managers and then people that develop strategy, that's where I was thinking already is allow people to focus. Focus on this. This is your total focus right here. Focus on this one thing. It's going to make everybody more productive because they can focus. You're going to get a whole lot more done because they can focus. Your account managers can give your clients the attention that they want to, because most people that are in account manager kind of positions, they're kind of customer service oriented anyway, and they want to stay on top of that. So that allows them to do that. So I think you're on the right track by allowing your people to focus on their core things versus dividing everything up amongst a couple of people, and nobody can really focus. And some people can function like that, but most people can't. You can do it for a little bit, but then you'll start to see people throwing their hands up in the air. I can't do all this. Or you'll see productivity go down, or you'll see the level of service provided go down, whether it's how well the campaigns look that they create, how effective they are, that starts to go down. And then the relationship with the client, that starts to go down because the people can't focus. So when you allow them to focus, usually you get a better end result, I think, just my opinion.
So Alex, Errol, is there a way that Alex can test and measure and KPI that so that he can track accountability of what's working and what's not working? Because I would think that's, I mean, Alex, do you have a secondary follow-up as to the new system you created to track?
We're still deeply in it right now. So created meaning like I think we workflowed and systemized only about 4 out of 9 product delivery processes that we've identified that we need to do. And there's sub processes for each, as you know. But well, we implemented EOS at the same time. So just so you know, we've gotten to Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies list, and everything sort of was just so good. And then I think we hit a critical point where, persons had, and as you said, this was exactly what you said, we had 5 or 6 account managers with assistants, and everyone had their own methods. Mm-hmm. and then we had a couple quit, right? We had a couple people just, it was time. They worked here for 4 years, time to go. And so they left and got great jobs and all that. I'm happy for them. We're still friends, but we don't really have any transition mapped out. There's no workflows. Customers got used to certain treatment. They demanded that from the new account managers.
Right.
It basically piled on, and then we introduced website services, brought engineers in. So this whole thing, I kicked this company. I got kicked by this company awake quite hard. Literally, I'm, to the point where survival at some point were questionable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One thing that I know that whenever we're looking at stuff, Alex, that Pete is pretty adamant about is org chart, job description, job duties, and KPIs.
And performance standards. Yeah.
All of those, anytime, any position in our company. And then when that duty is a systems manual, well, we have the checklist, which all go back to the systems manual, which also goes back to the flow charts that Errol made for us. But all of that is, it starts with the flow chart to know who's doing what. And that's, I think, why we've been so successful with outsourcing to Mexico the way we do and everything with such success, because we know exactly who is doing what and when, and everyone knows their dance partner, and everyone knows what lane to stay in, and there's no deviating. And it is hard. Look, everybody wants to personalize what they do. The problem is if that person gets hit by a bus, how do you keep the system running? How does it, like these 2 people got hit by a bus in your company, and all of a sudden it kind of ripped the Band-Aid off maybe of something, maybe you knew there was a challenge and you choose to ignore it, or maybe you didn't know, but either way, there was probably indicators and signs. My guess is that there was these challenges, but maybe you chose to, you had bigger challenges and it wasn't worth maybe fighting that fight or something. Is that?
Here was my thinking back then. Just maybe our audience can relate to the laziness, the CEO blinders, right? Like a horse, right? I had blinders on. So here's my excuses, okay? Oh, we're so innovative, so different. We don't need processes, right? We don't need processes because
we're different. We're different.
We're different. Because marketing, there's some truth to it. Marketing goes so quickly. We constantly have to iterate and test things, and there was no discipline to that iteration and testing. So we thought, okay, this is how we got to do it. We got to just figure it out, and that's going to be all fine. And then I also was busy accepting awards for growing the company so fast, I'm like, okay, I must be doing something right. Look at me. So good. Such a good CEO here.
Reading your own press clippings. Is that what they call it?
Yeah. And then I just got kicked in the nuts. Like,
yep.
What happened?
But when you look back, there was probably a lot of indicators looking back now going, okay, this was pretty evident, right? Now that Errol has helped us and we've been doing this for so long, and we look at it, and Pete is so systemized. When we look at companies and people tell us what the problem is, we go back to the basics. Like, where's your org chart? Where's your job descriptions? Where's your duties, responsibilities? Where's your KPIs? Where's your systems manual? If they don't have any of those, we tell them, look, until you fill these gaps, if you're missing one of these, it's not going to work.
Yeah, you're gonna have trouble. You're gonna have trouble at some point, and it's just important for everybody to know what they're being held accountable for. And if you have, like in your case, Alex, when you get an interest, from a potential client, what happens, and then how long does it take for that to happen? How long should it take for that to happen? When you're building a campaign, what's the goal? How many days should it take to build a campaign versus how many days does it actually take to build a campaign and deliver it to the, you can measure those kind of things, put those kind of things in your performance standards for your people, to see how well things are going in your company. And it'll point you right to things to look at. Like when I was an operations analyst, I collected a lot of data. Man, I had graphs. My office walls were covered in graphs, so that I could see what was going on. And I changed them every week. I'd update the data and print out the new graph and put it up on the wall so I could see, because it was going to point me. And then I wanted to see trends, week over week, month over month, year over year. So now you can identify trends in the company, and then you can identify, I call them blips. When the data shows it's just been running along, then either you get a uptick or a downtick. Well, my first thing is don't panic. Let's see what caused that. And then if the next month you get the same thing, okay, and it's a positive one, it's up on the positive side, okay, that's good. Let's hope it keeps going up. But if it stays on the downside, okay, what's driving that? Or if it blipped up and went back to normal, okay, that's a blip. Okay, let's look at what caused that blip. So not only am I into flow charts and processes, I'm into data. There's a story behind the data. There's always a story behind the number. I tell my clients, don't just look at the number. What's the story there? There's always a story behind the number, but you have to track the numbers to see what's going on. So I would encourage you to, okay, what data should we be tracking? And how are we going to track it? How often are we going to look at it to be able to identify maybe some tweaks we need to make, or just to know how things are running within your company? That's just me. I'm a data nut. Graph. Show me some graphs, man. I get excited because they tell a story. I can just stand and look at a graph and get the story, and then I start asking questions, which Steve knows. I drive people nuts asking questions.
That's all he does is ask questions, man. He doesn't say much. He just asks questions, and you kind of answer. You realize that you're answering the questions. What if you're committed to the process and you're committed to the fixing of the company, what he's asking you is basically he's asking you about the story that he's reading. And I think you're, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're just reconfirming what the numbers are telling you and what we're telling you. And you're kind of putting it all together. You're putting the puzzle together, basically, right?
Right.
And you're right. I mean, look, us, Errol, we're pretty fanatical with our numbers. I mean, if there's one of the things that we know, I mean, I don't know how many companies are like us out there, but I mean, you want to know a number in our company. You want to know a marketing acquisition cost. You want to know a strategy. You want to know anything. I mean, Pete is fanatical. I mean, to me, it could not be the most boring thing in my life, but I get why we need it. I just don't go to those meetings, but I just choose to ignore them. But I mean, you're right. You're absolutely right. Those numbers tell you such a story if you're willing to learn and listen and be able to react to them. Because look, at the end of the day, Alex, our job as leaders of a company are to see what the story is telling us and make pivots and decisions based on what the data is telling us. If we fail to make those decisions, we're failing as leaders, which means we're actually failing our employees and failing the company. So that leads to another question is do you have a system problem or do you have a leadership problem? And that's where it starts getting a little deeper of saying, okay, why am I choosing to ignore this information that is glaring at me? Is it because I'm lazy, I'm greedy, my ego, or I just choosing to ignore it, hoping it'll go away, which we all know that never happens. It just gets worse. We don't change because we want to. We change because we have to. you know, when something's glaring at us in the face and it's a Mack truck coming through our front door, then we know we have a problem. That's normally when we decide I've got to do something different. And, you know, maybe your 2 employees quitting was the Mack truck coming through your front door, the wake up call to say, you have a big problem. I don't know, but that's just my guess.
Well, we had a couple things happen at the same time. We had our partner walking in with a 2 weeks notice saying, after 5-year partnerships, we are now going to do what you do. Good luck competing together. And so that was a little bit of a and then we had few exits, right? Yeah, it was all at the same time. But I think to be honest with you, had I decided that I want to stay between let's call it 1.5 to 2.5 million company, I could probably get away with me knowing most of things, me sort of operationally being aware and giving people advice, and run the company and make decent money. I think I could have it wouldn't be the best company, and maybe would hit some problems in the future, but we could have done okay. I think 2.5 million is where it actually begins to either you decide that you are the company that wants to grow and scale and is positioned to do so, or you go right back to your little hole of 1.5 mil, sit there and enjoy your life. That's kind of how I think about it right now.
Well, I think that, you know, and I'm going to ask Errol this question because he just got back from that conference and he's doing another one. But I think what happens is, you know, you get to a point, and we were told this, we will get to a point where everything we have done will collapse. Our systems, our structure, nothing will work.
That's what happened.
And they say 50% of your people and 50% of your systems will break along the journey. The faster you grow, the faster they will break. And so at the speed that we are growing, they break a lot faster. Our job as leaders, for Pete and myself, is to see these breaks coming as quick as we can and try to head them off and fix them through systemization, not through emotions and yelling and screaming at people, but doing it through checklists, right? And so I think what happens, Alex, is that you either get better or you get worse. You never stay the same. Staying the same means you're getting worse, because it's a fluid environment. You're always changing. So by you thinking I'll just stay as a 1.5 million, you're really not. You're really regressing and going backwards, in my opinion, because you never stay the same. There's no such thing. It's like water in the ocean. It doesn't stop moving. It's going forwards or going backwards. It's not just sitting there. I mean, do you agree, Errol? What are your thoughts?
Well, you know, I guess I'm always in the mindset that always put your structure in place. Always. Like in Alex's case, he said in the beginning, you know, he felt like they were doing okay. They didn't need processes. But if you have employees and you lose one and you don't know how they were doing things, that's a wake-up call. It'll get your attention real quick, because now you're scrambling. How did they do that? You know, who did they talk to? How did this go? And then you bring somebody in and you don't have anything to train them by. Now you have another frustrated employee, right? And if everything is in your head, how do you scale? It's almost impossible if everything is in your head. What if something happens to you? Then how does the company keep going if everything is in your head and you're maybe incapacitated or, you know, for a length of time, and now your company goes in a tailspin because nobody really knows how to do anything or how things should go. People will make up ways to do things, but it may not be the best way to do it. So I just think it's important in the beginning, decide what it is you want to do as a company. What are we going to do, and how are we going to measure how well we're doing? Another thing that I do with my clients, okay, for each department, how do you measure how well that department is doing? We were talking about KPIs. Do you have any? You know, okay, if you don't, that's fine. We can come up with some, but you have to have some in order to know how well your company is running. Like people sitting in your seat, Steve, in your seat, Alex, my instructions to them is you should just be able to look at reports and know how well your company is doing. or if you have a dashboard, you should be able, you could be on the other side of the world and know how your company is doing. But you have to determine, what are we going to measure for each department? What are we, for every department, what are we going to measure to know how well we're doing? And if you can take the time to do that and set it up and pay attention to it, and look for the trends, I think, and then you can, and then even with all of that, some people make the mistake of trying to solve whatever they see in the trends. They try to solve it themselves. Just go ask your people that's doing it every day. They already have the answers. They can already tell you, hey, maybe if we would just do this, this might make this better. But so just go and ask them versus trying to figure it all out yourself. Just ask the people that do it every day.
So let me ask you this, Errol. You're getting a well-known name, obviously, in the property management industry. I don't know if that's if you want to or not, but you are, because you're doing such a good job, and people that I know that have used you and just, even in Australia, wherever. I mean, you've helped a lot of people. So you got this conference coming up. You just did one in Las Vegas. What did you learn? Because now you were interacting with a bunch of different people, right? And
right.
That was the first time you've ever done something like that on a it was an intimate group, but it was still a group scale with people with different businesses, different sizes, different challenges. What did you learn from that?
Well, what I learned is
probably for me never to throw your
industry.
You probably never wanted me to throw your name in the hat again, is what you learned.
No, actually, it was a lot of fun. Actually, what I learned, even you can be in the same industry and do things differently, right? Maybe because of different laws that are in the area where your business is, which makes you do a lease renewal different from the way a lease renewal in Texas different from the way they do it in Nevada or the way they do it in California because of the laws, right? So I learned people do things differently, even though they're in the same industry, because of things that impact them from the outside of the business.
Sure.
I also learned that, some people had their processes just kind of written in a tablet, and they were like, well, they were embarrassed, okay? And I said, stop, because you have something.
Yeah.
That's better than nothing. That's
Absolutely.
better than being in your head. So people can be a little intimidated.
Sure.
Where they look at what other people are doing and they say, well, I can never be like that. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. You've already started. You have something. What else did I learn? Did I want to do it again? I learned that because I see the impact.
Yeah.
You won't, or you want to do it? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Once again?
Did you say you want to do it again?
Yes. Actually, we're doing it again in January.
You're doing it again in January, right? Yeah.
You want to give it a little plug?
Of course. We're doing the PM Systems Conference again, January 14th through the 16th in Las Vegas, Nevada. The Suncoast Hotel, I think it's the name of it, if I remember properly.
Is there a website people could go to?
PMSystemsConference.com is where you can go. You can go and find out about the conference and even sign up there too.
What do you think? What do you think people will take away? Everyone's going to take away something different. I get that, but people coming to this event, why should they come, and what can they take away? Because it's for all levels, right? I mean, we use you in-depthly still to this day, and people are like, oh, you used Errol way back when. It's like, no, we still use Errol. Like, we still have you coming and fixing broken shit for us,
I think the biggest takeaway is how to document a process. What components should be in a process? What questions should you ask yourself in the process of documenting a process? And then the attendees get to work with other people in the same industry. How do you do your lease renewal process versus the way I do it? They pick up tidbits from one another in the breakout sessions, which I think people really enjoy. It's it's a hands-on conference. You're not just listening at me talking all the time. You're actually working. And I think the last conference, the people really appreciated that. But I think the biggest takeaway is learning how to document a process. What are the basic components, and what questions should you ask yourself when you decide to sit down and write out a process?
Now, Errol, do you go into the KPI section of that, or the outsourcing, or is this just very basic of getting their house in order?
Well, we got into what you should be measuring in each department, in your business development, your leasing department, the property management side, and the maintenance side. What numbers should you be looking at to tell you how well each department is running? We got into that. I think we did talk a little bit about outsourcing, because some people do outsource. So they were expressing why they outsource versus doing things in-house. So that is talked about, yeah.
Good. Yeah. I mean, because it's all encompassing. You really, in my opinion, you can't have one without the other. It's like a three-legged stool. You got to have all these pieces to make the stool stand.
Right.
The spinal cord is the flow charts and systems, but you can't, it won't stand on its own, I guess is what I'm trying to say. In my opinion, you need these supporting legs of, KPIs and outsourcing and these other things to make it all culminate together. Maybe not at that meeting in that juncture, but at some point they need to be thinking about that.
Well, we have to consider how to make your business, I guess, more efficient, how to put in cost savings. That's where, does it make sense to do this in-house, or can we get some cost savings by outsourcing, some of this administrative stuff? So yeah, you have to think about all of that stuff. And I can guarantee you, if you measure how well your departments are doing, you'll see opportunities to make changes.
Yeah. And it's, a lot of the stuff that the KPI, like you said, the KPIs, we make ours, and I know you've seen them, but ours are color coded. They're conditional. Red is bad, green is good. If they're green, don't care. It hits our numbers that we've already said are acceptable. If they're red, well, we got to put eyes on it. If it's red 2 weeks in a row, it's an issue now. And Alex, like you doing the traction, I mean, that's how we have a company scorecard. It's the health check of our company. And every week we are looking at that, because the problem is a lot of times people look at KPIs at the end of the month or the beginning of the month for the month prior. Now you're looking back and it's retroactive. What did we do wrong last month? Well, that was last month. There's some things, like I think it was you, or maybe it was Doug, our coach, saying that, companies like Walmart, they do hourly KPIs on certain things. It just depends on what you're doing. I'm sure in the SEO world, I'm sure it probably is seconds and minutes of whatever's important, but you can't look back at 2017 and go, hey, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? That's inconsequential now at this point.
Right.
So, yeah,
right.
KPIs.
Right. I'm a weekly person. Some things daily. Some things daily.
Yeah, but we're weekly too. We're the EOS system, which is basically implementing the EOS system as written in the book Traction, and it's really well thought out. We want to do it. We want to do it as it's prescribed, and then if we feel we need to tweak, we'll tweak. But it is prescribed very well. I think we gotta call this at this point, or else we all going to be talking for another hour or so. And there's only so much tape on this video recorder, Errol.
That's like his computer.
You're gonna make me go get Jelly Bean and show it to
Jelly Bean. We got to bring Jelly Bean out. You got to bring it to the conference, man. This is what you take it out of the museum.
Yeah. I think all the way, I want to say thank you to Steve, and definitely thank you to Errol. It was illuminating, this particular one. That's exactly why I do these shows. This is, I'd love to put good information out in the world, but to be honest with you, I want to be a little bit selfish. I want self-help as well. So, Errol, I think it's been really, really interesting to meet you, and I love your thought process, your sort of methodology, and your approach. Sounds great. I'm sure we'll work together quite a bit in the future. And Steve, as always, thank you for not being scared to poke at things.
Yeah, no problem. And also, I was going to say, as a shameless plug, if people want the KPIs that we use, we actually sell them on our website. So our KPIs that we use in our company for BDMs and for the operational side, people can actually go buy them if they want to reach out to me on Facebook, and I can happy to just to explain to them how to create them, or if they don't want to create them, they can buy them. So, but I would say, barring, putting Errol in a death spiral, that he is the guy that people need to talk to. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, Errol, I hate to say it, I think it's going to be hard to duplicate you, man. I really do. I mean, I think, we've had many conversations about this.
Right.
I think it can be, but I think, what you bring to the table is unbelievable. And, I think we're kind of the walking billboard that shows it,
Man, like I say all the time, Steve, I'm just having fun, man.
That's what it's all about.
I'm just, and I need one of those T-shirts, man. Where'd you get that T-shirt from?
This one?
Yeah.
Hey, I'll hook you up. We make those. This is one goal. So our whole.
Where's mine? Wait. Where's mine?
I don't have sizes for that bicep size. I don't make it. It's like,
hey man, it took me forever to get one from Property Meld with Drea to get me a Property Meld shirt. I'm still waiting for my coffee cup. That still never came. I got a coffee cup from you though, so that was good.
Yeah. I hook you guys up. Anyway, we got to end it here. Gentlemen, utmost pleasure talking to you. See you next week, you dear listeners. And again, thank you, my co-host and our guest.
See you guys.
Be well.